Sometimes all it takes is one sentence, just one, to set off a global firestorm. And that's exactly what happened when one of the world's youngest tech billionaires gave some pretty radical advice for teenagers. So let's dive into the debate that's making everyone, from parents to policymakers, rethink the entire future of education.
And there it is. That's the sentence, delivered at the 2023 AI for Good Global Summit. Teens should spend all their time AI coding. I mean, that is a bold statement, right? Super provocative, and it pretty much immediately split the world into two camps. But to really get why this one quote had so much impact, you have to understand the guy who said it.
Yeah, so who is Alexandr Wang? Because he's not just some random tech CEO. He is a genuine prodigy whose life story basically reads like the perfect advertisement for the very path he's pushing.
And what's truly mind-blowing is how fast this all went down for him. He was born to physicists, super smart parents. By 16, he was already interning at a major tech company, Quora. At 19, he drops out of MIT to start his own company, Scale AI. And then, get this, at only 25 years old, he becomes the world's youngest self-made billionaire. So when a guy with that kind of resume says something, people in the tech world definitely pay attention.
Okay, so obviously, that phrase, all their time, is what really got people fired up. Wang did come back later and clarify that he was using hyperbole. He didn't literally mean 24/7, no sleep, just code. What he was really getting at, he said, was the mindset. He wanted to emphasize a sense of urgency, of treating this like a full-time commitment, because the tools to get started are more accessible than they've ever been.
All right, so with that little bit of context, let's actually dig into the arguments for his position. Why do so many smart people hear that quote and think, you know what, he's got a point?
Well, those who agree with him point to what they see as a perfect storm of opportunity. For starters, the money is just undeniable. AI is where the jobs and the growth are. But more than that, the barriers to entry have totally crumbled. You've got free access to powerful GPUs, tons of open source models. The tools are basically out there for anyone. The idea is that this combination cultivates some seriously advanced problem-solving skills. It future-proofs your career, and as we're about to see, it gives even a teenager the power to have a massive global impact.
And we're not just talking theory here. This is happening in the real world. For instance, a 16-year-old in Kenya used public satellite data to build an AI model that could predict where devastating locust swarms would hit next. I mean, that's a huge deal for food security.
Or how about this one? A group of high schoolers in California saw a need for mental health support among their friends, so they just built a chatbot to help provide resources. They used AI to solve a problem right in their own community.
And this next one, wow, this one really drives home that point about accessibility. A 14-year-old in India trained a model that can spot fake medicine using nothing more than a smartphone camera. That could literally save lives. So when you see these kinds of examples, you can start to understand the passion behind Wang's argument.
Okay, but for every action, there's a reaction, right? For every argument for this idea, there's a really powerful one against it. Critics are raising some serious red flags about pushing teenagers into this kind of intense, narrow focus during such a critical time in their lives.
And the concerns here are, well, they're pretty significant. Psychologists worry it could stunt social and emotional growth. Educators argue that it completely ignores things like humanities and ethics, the stuff you need to build AI responsibly. Then there's the very real risk of burnout and mental health problems. Plus, what about the kids who don't have access to the latest tech? Doesn't this just make inequality worse? Which brings us to a really fundamental question. Does being a great coder automatically make you wise?
This is where someone like the prominent educator Diane Ravage comes in, and she just nails the heart of the opposition with this quote. The point of school isn't just to churn out workers, she argues. It's to create thoughtful citizens. And AI, it's an incredible tool for sure, but it's not the whole worldview. So if you boil it all down, this is really what the two sides look like. One side is focused on technical skills to create innovators and builders. The other is focused on holistic development to create thoughtful, ethical citizens. For one camp, AI is the foundation of everything to come. For the other, it's a powerful tool that needs to be managed really, really carefully.
So let's step outside the Silicon Valley bubble for a second. How is the rest of the world actually dealing with this? How are countries really tackling AI education on the ground?
Well, a couple of really interesting, more balanced models are popping up. Take Estonia, a powerhouse in digital education. They're teaching AI, absolutely, but they pair it with mandatory ethics workshops. Their whole focus is on doing AI the right way. Then you've got Finland. They're weaving AI into all their subjects, from art to history. Their focus is on showing how AI is just a part of life. Two totally different philosophies.
And this is where we have to ask a tough but really important question. When tech billionaires are pushing for a very specific type of education, whose interests are actually being served here? Is this really all about empowering kids? Or is it maybe about creating a perfect, specialized workforce for the tech industry? It's something you have to think about. So, now that the dust is kind of settled from that initial explosion, a consensus seems to be forming. People are starting to find a more balanced path forward, one that actually takes the best ideas from both sides of this debate.
And this balance model, it looks a little something like this. First, instead of sticking AI in one corner, you integrate it across the entire curriculum. You make the learning project-based, so it's tied to real-world problems. You make ethics a required course, not an elective. And, critically, you build in safeguards for digital wellness. And you work hard to make sure these programs are inclusive, so that everyone gets a shot, not just a select few.
And you know what's maybe the most telling part of this whole story? Even Alexandr Wang himself has kind of changed his tune. He talks less now about just pure coding and more about developing a builder mindset. And that, he says, has to include things like curiosity, collaboration, and even compassion. It's a pretty big shift, and it shows that this global conversation really did have an effect.
So what this all really boils down to is a new idea, AI fluency. People are calling it the new literacy for the 21st century. And it's not just about knowing how to write code. It's about understanding how these systems work, what they can be used for, and maybe most importantly, understanding the massive impact they're having on all of us.
Which leaves us right here with one last massive question. That whole debate that Alexandr Wang started, it was never really just about coding. It was about who gets to set the vision for the future. So as AI continues to reshape everything in our world, the real question we need to answer is, who do we actually want writing the code for our collective future?